A storm system is bringing snowfall to the Great Lakes, moving into the Northeast Friday into Saturday before a huge warm-up is getting ready to bring a warm Christmas to most of the U.S. At the same time, the West Coast is going to get rained out as atmospheric rivers return to the western U.S. In this video, we'll unpack this weather pattern, but first, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new here for more weather updates. So, here are the current National Weather Service watches, warnings, and advisories, and we have this winter storm across the Great Lakes region and the Midwest. You have winter storm warnings across parts of central Minnesota. Going into Wisconsin, winter weather advisories for most of Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, and a little bit of Michigan, and also winter weather advisories for the Appalachians. They actually had high wind warnings, even wind advisories and extreme fire danger warnings a few hours ago across South Dakota and Nebraska because of this clipper system is basically what it is. This is the simulated reflectivity, simulated precipitation from the NAM model, and you can see the snowfall across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, going through tonight, going into tomorrow. Then you see how some of the snowfall goes further south across the Ohio region, going into the Appalachians, and then also spreading into the Northeast, especially going into like New York. And then you could see by Friday night, you have some pretty heavy snowfall, but this is just offshore Maine, and it's kind of going into Nova Scotia. If this were to actually get closer to the Northeast, this could be a huge snowstorm. This is zoomed in a bit more, and you can see that, yeah, you have light snow over New York and places like that, but then you have all this really heavy snow, and yeah, this could be a very significant snowstorm for eastern Massachusetts and even Maine. A big snowstorm along the coast. Like in previous runs, it actually kind of goes back and forth. You have kind of some variation, so if there could actually be a little more snowfall along the coast here, even if there's a slight shift in the track. You have the short range ensemble forecast showing pretty heavy snowfall offshore the Northeast. If it were to actually shift just a little bit to the west, this could actually be a significant snowstorm, and it looks like a pretty significant snowstorm for Nova Scotia going into Friday night, going into Saturday, and then that kind of disappears. But pretty much you have that snowstorm, and then pretty much by Saturday going into Sunday, you have another storm system kind of moving into the west coast. That's the atmospheric rivers starting to return. But the snowstorm along the Northeast, really right now, it just looks like maybe 1 to 3 inches of snow across the Northeast for the most part. Maybe some places seeing 4 to maybe 5 inches, according to the short-range ensemble forecast. And then you have, just over the next 60 hours going into Saturday night, pretty much this clipper system and possibly this Northeast snowstorm, pretty much light accumulations of snow across the Great Lakes region, the Midwest, the Northeast. Really, the heaviest areas could see, it really looks like only 2 to 4 inches, maybe up to 6 inches of snow across some of these places. And yeah, it doesn't really look like a huge snowstorm. You could have, like, over Nova Scotia, apparently up to 8 inches or so, maybe even up to a foot of snow in some places. But the Northeast really looking at 2 to 4 inches, maybe heavier snowfall areas could see 6 to 8 inches of snow. Not really a big snowstorm. This is actually minor snowfall accumulations, but this is what happens afterwards. You have that sort of system, and then notice you have possibly a little bit of lake effect snow, but that's not even really going to be very significant either. But you do have some colder temperatures coming down into the Great Lakes region, into the Northeast. But then you have, notice the first atmospheric river. This is going into Saturday, which is December 21st. That's the first day of winter. So, you kind of have that snowstorm leaving the Northeast and some colder than average temperatures across the region behind that system. but then you have an atmospheric river moving into the west, and then you have another atmospheric river moving into the west coast, and so you have several atmospheric rivers just keep moving in, and then you actually have a lot warmer temperatures starting to expand, starting really, December 23rd, going into December 24th, Christmas Eve, going into Christmas. There's actually warmer temperatures. Even you could have rain across Michigan. Like, temperatures could be above freezing very far north, significantly above average temperatures. And then you have more atmospheric rivers kind of moving into the western U.S. But then going towards like January 1st, New Year's, pretty much it looks like things could change where you have, it does look like colder temperatures start moving into the northern part of the U.S. at some point, but you still have like above average temperatures across the East Coast with rain moving all the way up into southern Canada. That's pretty much what the Euro model is showing, and not really showing any significant snowstorms, at least not yet, and not for the next week or two. Here's a look at the actual temperature anomalies. This is the interesting thing. So you have these below average temperatures moving into the Great Lakes and the East Coast. This is December 21st, December 22nd, and then those below average temperatures move away, and then you see all these above average temperatures across the U.S. Pretty much almost the entire U.S. would be in above average temperatures on Christmas Eve, and then you actually have some cooler temperatures along the west coast with all the atmospheric rivers going into Christmas. The only places seeing probably near to slightly below average temperatures would be the west coast, California, and maybe a little bit of the east coast, maybe the mid-Atlantic area. But a lot of places, especially in the central part of the U.S., the northern plains and the Midwest, seeing above average temperatures. And then it looks like it gets even more intense after Christmas, going towards Saturday, December 28th. It really just is way above average. But then finally going towards New Year's, it looks like you have the weather pattern changes significantly, where you start getting a lot colder temperatures coming in with more storm systems possible. This is actually the Euro ensemble, kind of showing in 5-day averages, basically showing from December 19th to December 24th, you do have those below average temperatures, but then way above average temperatures in the west, and that kind of just expands eastward, especially going towards Christmas. You have way above average temperatures, especially across the northern plains in the Midwest, and also Canada, well above average temperatures, while the East Coast is pretty much they're probably the only places that see near to slightly below average temperatures, along with parts of California. But then you see that warmth does shift further east, and then you start seeing below average temperatures moving into the western U.S., going into the end of the year, going into the beginning of next year. This is the 5-day average from December 22nd to December 27th. This would include Christmas Eve and Christmas. You have below average temperatures along the East Coast, and just well above average temperatures across a lot of the U.S., especially for the northern parts of the U.S. These places would normally be like probably 0 degrees or in the teens, but then if you have temperatures in the 30s and 40s, that's going to be very, very warm and unseasonable. The GEFS ensemble pretty much is showing the same thing, especially centered over it's pretty much the central part of the U.S. seeing the most warmth, with the coasts seeing slightly cooler temperatures. Here are the actual temperatures according to the Euro model. It's showing going into tomorrow. This is looking at Friday. You do have below 0 temperatures across North Dakota and places like that, but then that colder air shifts towards the northeast going into December 21st, December 22nd, so this weekend. Then you do see a lot warmer temperatures across Texas and the Southwest. And then what happens is, you notice this is going into Christmas Eve. this is, you have pretty much a lot of the U.S. is seeing temperatures above freezing. You have temperatures in the 20s across North Dakota, the northern plains, kind of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Northeast is still pretty cold. But then you have temperatures in the 40s and 50s going into the central U.S. And then even in like Montana, you have temperatures in the 40s. That's kind of warm for late December. And then you do have temperatures across the South and Texas in the 50s, but then Texas starting to get into the 60s, maybe even 70s in the Southwest. That's above average too, but then you can see that after Christmas you start seeing even warmer temperatures into places like even Illinois in the 50s. This is way above average. And then even Kentucky seeing temperatures probably in the 60s in some places. The South warming back up to the 60s and 70s, even approaching 80 degrees for South Texas. Yeah, so definitely above average temperatures. But then as you go towards January 1st, then you can see a big change where you have a warm front trying to bring warmer temperatures further north, but then a lot of colder air comes down into the western part of the U.S. especially. And then this is going way far out there, so this is probably not going to be super accurate, but going all the way out to January 3rd, this could change significantly. You do see a lot colder temperatures across most of the U.S. The Euro model is showing this clipper system kind of going from the Great Lakes to the Northeast, and then you see all these above average heights, and then going towards Christmas, and then you start seeing storm systems moving into the western U.S., but still a lot of ridging above average heights and warmer temperatures before you get to like January 1st, January 2nd, where you start seeing more troughing and colder temperatures and the potential for more storm systems. And the GFS is a bit different. The GFS is showing the same thing with the Clipper and the Northeast snowstorm, and then more atmospheric rivers coming into the western U.S., but the GFS is showing a lot more rain and storms across the eastern U.S. after Christmas, and then it gets even more wild with other storm systems once you get past that like 10 to 12 days. Then this is not something you could really say is going to happen. This definitely will change a lot, but it does show a more active weather pattern with more storms potentially after the end of the year. In terms of actual temperature anomalies, below average temperatures kind of across the east over the next few days, but then you see this huge warm up, and on Christmas it actually doesn't look that bad. It's above average, but not extremely above average across the U.S. Over Canada, it's a bit more dramatic with temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above average, but over most of the U.S. in general, probably 10 to 15 degrees above average in the central part of the U.S. on Christmas, according to the GFS. But then it gets even more dramatic and more extreme by Saturday, December 28th. You have temperatures 30 degrees above average across Missouri and Illinois. You have temperatures 35 to 40 degrees above average across parts of Canada, even Ontario, Canada, Manitoba, seeing temperatures up to 40 degrees above average, and it gets even worse, potentially going towards the 29th, temperatures 45 degrees above average across Canada, and 30 to 35 degrees above average around Michigan. And that's pretty extreme. I'm sure this could be record heat in some places, and then all that heat really stays around southeastern Canada. But then you do see by New Year's a lot colder air ready to plunge down into the western part of the U.S. especially. It's really, you could see by January 3rd, January 4th, temperatures 35 to 40 degrees below average, really coming down into Montana, and then even coming towards Texas potentially, and California. You could just definitely see a lot colder temperatures going into the beginning of January. The GFS is pretty much, it starts off similar to the Euro and then just really gets more interesting with a lot more storm activity and colder temperatures, especially across the western part of the US. So that's pretty interesting what the GFS is showing now. We'll just have to see what happens with that over the next couple weeks. The Climate Prediction Center's 6 to 10 day temperature outlook shows for December 25th to December 29th a 90 to 100% chance of above average temperatures. This is pretty serious over the Midwest, really, but specifically, again, centered on the central part of the U.S., the coasts are not going to see temperatures quite as above average. It's still going to be, in general, going towards above average temperatures, but really, it's the central part of the U.S., especially the Midwest, seeing 90 to 100% chance of above average temperatures, and also above average precipitation too. So a lot of these storm systems, especially the atmospheric rivers across the west coast, and then even in parts of the Midwest and the South, still above average. The only places seeing below average precipitation, the Northeast and the Southwest, but really most of the U.S. seeing above average precipitation along with the above average temperatures. So a lot of rain, probably not really a lot of snow, which is, that's, I guess, some people would like that and other people would see it as pretty disappointing, especially, for Christmas. The chance of a white Christmas is pretty low this year for a lot of places across the U.S. The H14 day temperature outlook shows these above average temperatures shift a bit to the east, but still above average. You can see that it starts cooling down across the Northwest, and so those cooler temperatures will start moving in, potentially going towards the beginning of January. The total snowfall over the next 2 weeks or so, this is really going all the way to the end of the year. Really not that much snow according to the Euro model, especially you do have some snow across the mountains in the western U.S., but even that's not that much, maybe a couple feet of snow, unless you're in like Washington where it looks like they'll get quite a bit more snow, but just only a couple inches across the Great Lakes region, the Northeast, the Northern Plains, the Ohio Valley, really just a couple inches of snow from the storm system that's over the next couple days, but after that, not really much snow with all those above average temperatures. And the GFS, same thing, except they're showing at the beginning of January a lot more winter storm activity, so that could really add up a lot of snow across the Midwest. We'll have to see if that happens. And then in terms of just total precipitation, it does look like the central part of the U.S. going from like Texas, going across to parts of the Midwest, could see a decent amount of rainfall with about 1 to 2 inches. Maybe the further south you go across Texas, you could see 3 to 5 inches of rain. But a lot of the rain, most of the rain is going to be over the west coast where you have all those atmospheric rivers. Some of these places could see up to 10 inches, maybe some areas seeing up to a foot of rain. And then the northern plains really not seeing much rain, and the southwest really dry. Like Southern California is going to be messed up if that continues. But this winter does look below average for the Southwest, especially with the La Nina or even an Enso neutral. The GFS is showing in total precipitation same thing, except the East seeing a lot more rain and a lot of rain over California on the GFS. Some of these places seeing like 12 to 15 inches of rain potentially. So yeah, that's what's happening pretty much. You have the kind of a clipper system going across the Great Lakes into the Northeast, and then colder air behind that, but that doesn't last too long. You have warmer temperatures that expand across most of the US for Christmas. And then you have more atmospheric rivers returning to the western US. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, share the video, comment below, and hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications for more weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone, out.